fine as a lady, stranger to blue water, coming home to a place he'd never been before.
I hope that he wasn't scared, that it all happened pretty quickly for him.
She kept quiet. While the world mourned the loss of one of America's most beloved singers, Annie Martel Denver chose silence over speaking out. But now, more than 25 years after that tragic October day in 1997, the woman who inspired John Denver's biggest hit has finally opened up about their love story, their heartbreak, and the last words he ever said to her. What she revealed will bring tears to your eyes and change everything you thought you knew about their relationship. This is a story about love that never really dies, even when everything else falls apart. John Denver wasn't just a singer. He was a feeling. When his gentle voice filled the radio waves in the 1970s, something magical happened. People stopped what they were doing and listened. His songs weren't just music. They were memories waiting to be made. Songs like Take Me Home, Country Roads, and Rocky Mountain High became the soundtrack of an entire generation. But behind all those beautiful melodies was a man who struggled with fame, pressure, and the weight of being perfect in everyone's eyes. The world saw him as this peaceful, nature-loving guy who could do no wrong. But fame has a way of changing people, and John Denver was no different. The critics were harsh. They called him names that hurt deeply. The Mickey Mouse of rock, they said. The Ronald Reagan of pop. These words stung because they made his music sound fake and shallow. But John knew something they didn't. His music came from real places, real feelings, and real love, especially his love for Annie. Annie Martel was just a regular girl from Minnesota when she met John Denver in 1966. She was working at a hotel, and he was still trying to make it as a musician. Back then, he wasn't famous yet. He was just Henry John Duchendorf Jr., a young man with big dreams and a guitar. Their love story started like something out of a movie. John was performing at a small venue, and Annie happened to be there that night. When their eyes met, something clicked. It wasn't the kind of instant attraction you see in Hollywood films. It was deeper than that. It was the kind of connection that makes you feel like you found your other half. They talked for hours that first night. John told her about his dreams of making music that would touch people's hearts. Annie shared her own hopes and fears. By the time the sun came up, they both knew this was something special. They started dating, and soon John realized he had found his muse. In 1967, just 1 year after they met, John and Annie got married. It was a simple ceremony, nothing fancy. They didn't have much money, but they had each other. And for John, that was everything. Annie became his anchor, the one person who kept him grounded when the world started spinning too fast. As John's career began to take off, Annie was right there beside him. She supported his dreams even when it meant long nights alone while he was on tour. She celebrated his victories and helped him through his defeats. When he wrote songs, she was often his first audience. Her opinion mattered more to him than any music critic or record executive. Then came the song that would change everything. In 1974, John Denver wrote Annie's song as a gift to his wife. The story behind it is beautiful and simple. John was skiing in the mountains of Colorado when inspiration struck. The melody came to him all at once, and he knew immediately that this song was for Annie. He rushed home and played it for her. Annie's song wasn't just another tune. It was John's heart set to music. Every word, every note was his way of telling the world how much he loved his wife. When the song was released, it shot to the top of the charts. People everywhere were singing about John's love for Annie. But success is a price. As John Denver became more famous, the pressures of celebrity life began to take their toll. He was traveling constantly, recording albums, doing interviews, and performing concerts. The quiet life he and Annie had built together started to crack under the weight of fame. John began drinking more. The pressure to always be the happy, peaceful guy that everyone expected was exhausting. Behind closed doors, he was struggling with anxiety and depression. The man who sang about mountain highs was often feeling very low, and Annie watched helplessly as a man she married slowly disappeared behind the celebrity mask. Their marriage began to suffer. John was gone more than he was home. When he was there, he wasn't really present. His mind was always somewhere else, thinking about the next tour, the next album, the next thing he had to do to keep his career going. Annie felt like she was living with a stranger. The fight started small, but grew bigger over time. John's drinking made everything worse. He would say things he didn't mean and make promises he couldn't keep. Annie tried to hold her family together, but it was like trying to catch water with her bare hands. No matter how hard she squeezed, everything kept slipping away. By the early 1980s, their marriage was in serious trouble. They tried counseling. They tried separations. They tried everything they could think of to save what they had built together. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes two people can love each other deeply and still not be able to make it work. In 1982, after 15 years of marriage, John and Annie divorced. It was one of the most painful things either of them had ever experienced. The woman who had inspired his greatest love song was no longer his wife. The man who had written her a song that would live forever was no longer her husband. But here's where their story becomes even more touching. Even after their divorce, John never stopped loving Annie. And Annie never stopped caring about John. They had children together, and they both wanted to do what was best for their family. So they found a way to stay connected, even though they were no longer married. John continued to send Annie flowers on her birthday and on Mother's Day. It wasn't about trying to win her back. It was about showing respect for the woman who had been such an important part of his life. These gestures meant everything to Annie. They reminded her that underneath all the pain and disappointment, the love they had shared was real. Meanwhile, John's passion for flying was growing stronger. He had always loved airplanes, but after his divorce, flying became his escape. When he was in the cockpit, he felt free from all the pressures and problems on the ground. Flying was his therapy, his meditation, his way of finding peace. John wasn't just a casual pilot. He was serious about aviation. He earned multiple licenses and flew different types of aircraft. He was especially drawn to experimental planes, the kind that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in aviation. These planes were cutting edge, but they were also more dangerous than regular aircraft. On October 12, 1997, John Denver climbed into the cockpit of his newly purchased experimental plane, a Rutan Long-EZ. He was planning to fly from Monterey to Los Angeles for a concert the next day. It should have been a routine flight for someone with his experience. But sometimes, even the most experienced pilots face situations they can't control. Just minutes after takeoff, something went terribly wrong. The plane's engine failed due to a problem with the fuel system. John found himself in every pilot's worst nightmare, losing power shortly after takeoff with very little time or space to react. Despite all his training and thousands of hours of flight experience, there was nothing he could do. The plane crashed into Monterey Bay, and John Denver was gone. The news of his death shocked the world. Radio stations played his songs all day long. Fans gathered at memorials to sing, "Take Me Home," "Country Roads," "Together." Fellow musicians shared stories about his kindness and generosity. The man who had brought so much joy to so many people was suddenly gone at just 53 years old. But while the world was mourning publicly, Annie Martel Denver was grieving privately. She had lost her first love, the father of her children, and the man who had written the most beautiful song ever written about her. The pain was almost unbearable. For years, Annie stayed quiet. She didn't give interviews or write books or try to cash in on her connection to John Denver. She focused on raising their children and living her life away from the spotlight. When reporters called, she politely declined to comment. When fans reached out, she thanked them but kept her thoughts to herself. But recently, Annie finally decided to break her silence. What she revealed about their last conversation will touch your heart and might even make you cry. She shared details that showed just how deep their connection remained, even after all those years apart. Annie explained that just days before John's fatal crash, he had called to thank her for flowers she had sent for his birthday. It was a simple call, the kind of conversation they had many times over the years since their divorce. They talked about their children, shared some memories, and caught up on each other's lives. But just before they were about to hang up, John paused. Annie could hear him take a deep breath on the other end of the line. Then, in the gentle voice she remembered from their early days together, He said something that would stay with her forever. "Oh, but Annie, I love you." Those 5 words carried the weight of their entire history together. All the love they had shared, all the pain they had endured, all the years that had passed between them were wrapped up in that simple statement. Annie was surprised by the emotion in his voice and the honesty of the moment. Without hesitation, she replied, "John, I love you, too. Have a great trip, and I'll talk to you when you get back." But there would be no trip back. Within days of that conversation, John Denver was gone. Those were the last words they ever spoke to each other, and they were words of love. Annie has said that she takes comfort in knowing their last exchange was filled with love rather than anger or regret. After everything they had been through, the divorces, the arguments, the years of separation, love was still there. It had never really left. It had just been buried under layers of hurt and disappointment. She also revealed that John's death wasn't completely unexpected to her. She had worried about his flying for years, especially his fascination with experimental aircraft. She knew how much flying meant to him, but she also understood the risks involved. The night before he died, she had a strange feeling that something wasn't right, though she couldn't explain why. Annie shared in the days following John's death. She found letters he had written to her over the years, but never sent. In these letters, he expressed regret about how their marriage had ended and gratitude for the love they had shared. He wrote about watching their children grow up and wishing things could have been different between them. One letter, dated just months before his death, talked about how Annie's song had become bigger than either of them could have imagined. He wrote that every time he performed it, he thought of her in the early days of their love. He said the song had become a gift not just to her, but to everyone who had ever been in love. Annie also revealed that John had been working on new music before his death, and some of those songs were about forgiveness and second chances. He had been thinking about the past and wondering if it was possible to heal old wounds. She believes he was in a good place emotionally when he died, despite the struggles he had faced over the years. The investigation into John's crash revealed that it was caused by engine failure due to a fuel system problem. It wasn't pilot error or reckless behavior. It was a mechanical failure that could have happened to any pilot flying that type of aircraft. This gave Annie some peace, knowing that John hadn't been taking unnecessary risks that day. Annie has spent the years since John's death focusing on their children and keeping his memory alive in private ways. She has supported various charities that John cared about, particularly those focused on environmental protection and music education. But she has always done this quietly, without seeking attention for herself. She explained that breaking her silence now feels right, because enough time has passed for her to share these intimate details without feeling like she's betraying John's privacy. She wants people to know that despite their problems, their love story was real and beautiful and worth remembering. Annie also wants people to understand that John Denver was more complex than his public image suggested. He wasn't just a simple, wholesome guy that everyone thought he was. He was a real person with real struggles, real pain, and real dreams. His music came from that real place, which is why it still touches people today. Looking back on their relationship, Annie says she has no regrets. Yes, their marriage didn't work out, but the love they shared created beautiful music and beautiful children. Their story reminds us that love doesn't always last forever in the way we hope it will, but that doesn't make it any less meaningful. She finds it beautiful that Annie's song continues to be played at weddings and romantic moments around the world. The song has become bigger than their personal story. It has become a symbol of pure, honest love that speaks to people across generations and cultures. Annie's decision to finally speak about her life with John Denver gives us a more complete picture of one of America's most beloved entertainers. It shows us that behind the famous songs and public persona was a real relationship between two people who loved each other deeply, even when they couldn't make their marriage work. Her story is ultimately about the power of love to endure even when everything else falls apart. John and Annie's love didn't end with their divorce, and it didn't end with his death. It lives on in their children, in his music, and in the memories they created together. This revelation from Annie Martell Denver reminds us that love stories don't always have fairy tale endings, but that doesn't make them any less beautiful or important. Sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that show us how to love someone even when we can't be with them. John Denver's music will continue to touch hearts for generations to come. And now, Thanks to Annie's courage in breaking her silence, we understand even better where that music came from. It came from real love, real joy, real pain, and real hope. It came from two people who found each other, loved each other deeply, and never really let go, even when they had to say goodbye. Their story teaches us that love is complicated, that life is fragile, and that the connections we make with other people are what make everything else worthwhile. John Denver and Annie Martell may not have had their happily ever after, but they had something just as precious. They had a love that inspired beautiful music and changed the world. What do you think about John Denver and Annie's story? Have you ever experienced a love that lasted beyond a relationship? Let us know in the comments below. If this story touched your heart like it touched ours, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves classic music or beautiful love stories. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos about the stories behind the songs and the people who made the music we love. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.